What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're taking a closer look at who I believe will be the riskiest player taken within the first 2 rounds of fantasy drafts come August. I'm sure you saw by the thumbnail, but today we're going to discuss why Austin Ekeler is easily the riskiest pick this season. There are 3 big bullet points that are necessary to mention when you bring up Ekeler's name in the RB discussion. Those 3 points are, number 1, I'm going to show you how limited a running back Ekeler is. We all know he's a great pass catcher, but how is he as a runner? Point number 2 is, what's his draft capital compared to other running backs at that draft position? And point number 3, where does Ekeler's 2019 season match up historically compared to other running backs? Before we start looking at Austin Ekeler's running style, I just wanted to mention that almost 80% of the people who view my videos don't subscribe to the channel. So, if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, I'd greatly appreciate it. I post a video about once a week, so you'll have more fantasy content coming your way all August long. So, if you like what you see today, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Alrighty, let's get into the film. Alright, so let's look at some of the good things that Austin Ekeler puts down on film. For starters, he gets up to his top speed really quickly if he has a runway. Another great thing is, we all know, he's an amazing pass catcher. I mean, we saw the numbers he put up last year, and that's the main reason why we really want him for 2020. And coming off the great pass catcher, he can actually line up at receiver if need be, and you'll see a couple clips of him actually doing that. Another big positive with Austin Ekeler is he's pretty much game plan proof. I mean, he really can play in any situation. He can be your goal line back if you want him to be, which he's a little small for that, but he could be. You never have to take him off the field for third down situations because that's where he thrives. And if you want to play another running back, you can even put him at receiver. The Chargers don't really have a third receiver, and that's where Austin Ekeler can fit in perfect. And the last thing that I want to mention is that he does break arm tackles in the second level. We'll talk about it in a little bit where I think he does this a little inconsistently, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but he does break arm tackles at the second level. Alright, so on this first play here, you're going to see Ekeler get the outside zone to the left and really take off. You can see how quick he can get to, his top speed, or, near it because he gets hit in the secondary, but pretty quickly, especially here from this angle. I mean, look at that burst through the line. It's pretty quick. And here's a screen pass where you're going to see how fast Ekeler can really get up to top speed and really how fast he is. I mean, it's just a simple screen pass out to the right. He gets clean blocks and a path to run, and he takes off, and he's pretty fast. Here's a great example of Austin Ekeler lined up at receiver. He's matched up against a linebacker at the bottom of the screen, and that linebacker stands no chance. Austin Ekeler pulls a double move and beats him deep for the long touchdown. The linebacker's not even close. Now, let's talk about Ekeler's weaknesses. A lot of his runs have issues within the run. He makes a nice cut, but doesn't have the balance to stay up and make, a great juke. Isn't patient and then runs into a blocked line. Or he is patient, but then he still doesn't have the balance. Isn't strong enough to put a foot in the ground and break a tackle. And also, he cannot break a tackle. He will not break you a tackle if the defender gets a good square hit on Ekeler. You're going to see on this play here, Ekeler's going to get the sweep out left, and he's going to try to cut upfield. But when he tries to cut, he looks off balance. He looks like he's trying to kind of tiptoe, but his head's going over his feet. And when you can see from this angle here, when he cuts, he pitter-patters. He doesn't just stick and cut. He pitter-patters, and it takes way too long for someone at his size and his speed to just plant and cut. And on the last play I'll show you, Ekeler shows great vision. He sees the linebacker going through the wide open hole up the middle, so he tries bouncing it outside, which is good. But then he falls over. He doesn't have great balance to let him burst through the hole, which we know he can do with his quick speed. Especially running backs at his size are supposed to have great balance, so we need to see that improve a little bit from Ekeler. And my last problem with Austin Ekeler's tape is it's so inconsistent. There's highlight plays, but then there's a lot of low light plays too. He will make players miss in the secondary. He'll make a great juke, but then the next play, he makes a terrible attempt at a juke, a very weak juke. He breaks arm tackles one play, but then gets brought down by an even weaker arm tackle that most backs will break. And he shows big bursts at times, but other times his cuts and jump cuts look really slow. So it's really inconsistent. Here's a great play by Ekeler. He's going to catch the screen pass, and he's going to break 2 to 3 tackles easy on this play. I mean, they're weak tackles, which I think he's good at doing. He's good at breaking the weak arm tackles and gets in the end zone. makes a great play at the end to dive in. And you're going to see from this angle too. I mean, he catches the screen pass, which we know he's great at. That's one. That's almost two. Three right there, and then he's going to dive into the end zone. I mean, that's a great play to see. So we just saw that play where Ekeler breaks 2 to 3 arm tackles easy. But then here's this play. He catches another screen pass, and that's a weak ankle tackle that just brings him down pretty easily. I mean, I need to see him have more power and to stiff arm this guy into the ground, to hurdle him, to just run through him. I mean, that's a weak tackle. And here's another juke or a cut from Ekeler that looks pretty terrible. I mean, of course he runs into Phillip Rivers here, but when he tries to cut it left, then up into the line of scrimmage, it's so slow. Right here, look, he cuts and he looks like he's about to fall over again. I need to see quicker, sharper cuts from Ekeler. And then look at the cut Ekeler makes on this play. He stays small, gets through the line, jump cuts through, which I wanted to see. Then he makes the secondary guy freaking miss like crazy, makes him miss by a mile. I mean, where is this on every play? Or at least a resemblance of this on cuts from Ekeler. They're not there consistently. Alright, so let's talk about where Austin Ekeler is being drafted in fantasy drafts so far. As of right now, Ekeler is being drafted at pick 204, pick 16. So he's a 16th player overall in PPR leagues, which means he's going early second round in most drafts. So if you're a team that drafted late first round, and maybe you went receiver, maybe Devontae Adams was there, Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, Michael Thomas possibly, you might be in the mix for Austin Ekeler as your running back one, which is a really risky move. My one concern with Ekeler is that his draft stock is going to rise dramatically. I mean, think about it. For the common, casual fantasy player, they probably haven't really looked at fantasy yet. With COVID going on and not even sure if we're going to have a season, I'm sure the average fantasy player hasn't really looked yet. So when they do go to look, they're going to see Matthew Berry and ESPN rankings, ranking him as the number 6 or 7 back. You can't really blame the casual player for thinking that because of all the receiving yards last year. I mean, almost had 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. No Melvin Gordon this year. I mean, Melvin Gordon's gone. So Austin Ekeler has to step up as the running back. And not to mention this, I think stupid argument that everyone tries to make with Tyrod Taylor going to be in there, so he's not a great downfield passer, so they're going to just dump it off. Same thing with Justin Herbert. He's a rookie, so they're not going to take a lot of shots with him, let him gel into the offense. So it's going to be a lot of dump offs. To me, that just means they're making the offense a lot worse, which means less scoring opportunities for Austin Ekeler. Now, let's look at history. Let's look at NFL history here. These are some of the greatest fantasy football seasons ever. Christian McCaffrey last year had over 1,000 yards, over 100 catches. Only the third running back to have 1,000 and 1,000 in a season. He finished with 6 receiving touchdowns. Marshall Faulk, one of the best running backs probably of all time, and one of the greatest offenses of all time, literally called the greatest show on turf, finished the season with 8 and 9 touchdowns, and that wasn't even in his 1,000 yard season. LaDainian Tomlinson had 100 catches in one season, only 4 touchdowns. David Johnson a few years back, 4 touchdowns on 80 catches. Priest Holmes, 70 and 74 catches, finished the season with 0 receiving touchdowns. Steven Jackson had one really great receiving year, 90 receptions, 3 touchdowns. Roger Craig, another 1,000 guy, with Joe Montana as his quarterback, finished with 6 touchdowns in a season. Do we really think Austin Ekeler, who I think is probably the least talented player I should say, on this list, is going to really bounce back and go from anywhere from 6 to 8 receiving touchdowns? I just don't think it's possible. I don't see it happening again. It's highly, highly unlikely. The one thing we need to understand about Austin Ekeler is if he doesn't get a lot of rushing attempts, which I don't think he will, he needs to make up for his lack of attempts in receiving yards and receiving catches and touchdowns. So hypothetically, if we kept his rushing numbers the same from 2019 into 2020, which I know they'll change a little bit, but just hypothetically, if we don't change any of his rushing numbers and we modify his receiving numbers to what I think a Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert offense, it could be significantly worse, like a lot worse. I mean, he had 108 targets last year. If you drop that down to 90 and make his receptions from 92 to 86, or 68 rather, because he did catch 85% of his passes, which is really high. So if I drop that down to 75, which is still pretty high, that leaves it at 68. And he was at 10.8 yards per catch, which is super high as well. So if I drop that down to 9, which I still think is a reasonable number, and 8 touchdowns, which is not reasonable at all, to 3, which I think is very doable. These are the numbers you come out with. So you come out with 220.9 fantasy points. I think that is a logical, realistic outlook for a 2020 Tyrod Taylor, Justin Herbert Charger offense. Those numbers would have put Austin Ekeler at RB 13, which still isn't a bad season, but not as reliable as you'd want it to be. It's hard for me to sit here and guess and project and make up numbers. It really is, because we have no idea what his rushing output's going to be next year. If he ends up getting 225 rushing attempts, then of course he's going to finish as an RB1. But do you really expect that? Because I don't. I personally don't think he's going to go up that much. If he finishes 180 to 200 rushing attempts, I'll be pretty surprised, because I don't think he's a big enough or a good enough runner to really earn the starting running back job as a runner. Receiving, it can still happen. I don't think it'll be at the same capacity as it was last year with Phillip Rivers, because Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert aren't up to the level of Phillip Rivers, who's been there for 15 years. With the combination of Austin Ekeler being, in my opinion, an average, not special rusher, being so heavily dependent on receiving stats with 2 below average QBs, a high draft capital pick in the mid to early second round, which I think may actually rise, possibly having to be your RB1, and him being a one-year wonder is way too many red flags for me to draft him. So this year, I'll be looking somewhere else in my fantasy drafts this summer. Alright, and that's it. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't already, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Like I said earlier, we do a video about once a week, so there'll be more fantasy football content coming your way throughout the summer. Once again, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.